This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, friends, let's come back to order. The sooner we get done here, the sooner we can go home, go to bed. Not that I'm thinking about that or anything. Where did we leave off? So we approved Anna Rose's item. We're on to discussion items now. Number 13 is the 2019 through 2023 North Front Range NPO targets for safety performance measures. Anna Rose, please.
It's on page 37 in your package.
Page 37.
All right, well, thank you. Each year, the NFRMPO is required to set targets for 5 safety performance measures, and this is one of the sets of federally required performance measures and targets that the MPO has to set. The 5 targets that we have to set are the number of fatalities, the fatality rate per 100 million vehicle miles traveled, number of serious injuries, and then the serious injury rate per 100 million vehicle miles traveled, and then the non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries. So a few of the things that I'll be talking through in this presentation today are the trends that we have seen in our region as far as crashes. As I've brought this item the last couple of years, the Planning Council and TAC have expressed interest in seeing what it would look like to set our own targets or to present that information of what it looks like for the MPO, so I have that as well. And then I'll also be talking about how this kind of integrates into the other safety planning that we as the MPO are doing, as well as the state. And so CDOT is also required to set these targets for statewide performance, and their targets they set in August of last year for this 5-year period, which is 2019 to 2023. So the targets are required to be set using a 5-year average. So the 2019 to 2021 numbers are the actual numbers that are used, and then 2022 and 2023 are forecasted numbers that are used to set these targets. And that forecasting is done based on 10 prior years worth of data. So one of the things to keep in mind with this federal target setting requirements is that the targets must be data driven. So it must be based on the data. They are not allowed to be aspirational targets. And the MPO has 2 options for setting these targets. We can either support the CDOT statewide targets by agreeing to plan and program projects which contribute to the achievement of these targets, or we can set regionally specific targets. Over the last 6 performance periods that we have been required to set these targets, we have chosen to support the statewide targets. So I'll go through a couple slides that look at the crash data that we have available to us, comparing CDOT's numbers to the NFRMPO numbers. And so first we have the fatalities. And so what you have on the screen in the darker gray are the actual numbers that are reported, and then any of those light gray bars are the forecasted numbers. And then the orange line is that rate for 100 million vehicle miles traveled. So one of the things you might see kind of stands out on this chart is the NFRMPO actual fatalities in 2019 decreased by about half from what we're seeing in any previous or years after. So that's one of the things that when we looked at setting these targets the last couple of years, knowing that these targets have to be data driven and seeing that we have this kind of data anomaly throws off that 5-year average. It artificially brings it down. And so that's one of the considerations that we've taken in looking at these targets is having those kind of weird data years. So in addition to the 2019 fatalities being decreased, there was 2020 where a lot of the crash trends and things, were impacted by COVID-19. So those are just a few things to take into consideration when we look at these data-driven targets. Similar on the serious injuries, The darker orange is the actual numbers, and the lighter colors are the forecasted numbers. And one thing I didn't mention, the forecasting methodology that CDOT used is the same methodology that we use to look at our fatalities and serious injury trends in those out years as well. Additionally, you'll see that the CDOT 2021 numbers are actual numbers, whereas the NFRMPO numbers are the projected or the forecasted, because at this point in time, we don't have that data yet. We are still waiting to get the crash data for 2021. And then the last charts that I have are the non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries. And we've also seen some data issues here as well with the crash listings coming out of CDOT, that they weren't being coded correctly, and so the numbers that we have for non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries were not quite accurate. So we have done some work to try to get local data to be able to supplement that, but not all jurisdictions have that local data for us to be able to use. So it's still, we're still kind of guessing at how many non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries we had until we get better data from CDOT. So with all that, we did take those 5-year averages for the NFRMPO, and that's what we have on the screen here, is comparing the CDOT statewide targets to the NFRMPO's portion of those targets, essentially. One of the things I just want to note that we've talked about in the past is that normally when you talk about targets, you're talking about a number that you want to achieve, but it's kind of a misnomer when you're talking about these safety targets. Really, these are the ceiling. We don't want to exceed any of these targets in that 5-year period. So I mentioned some of the data issues that we have when we look at calculating these 5-year averages. A couple other considerations when we're looking at setting these targets is first that the NFRMPO does not have safety-specific funding to be able to go towards safety projects, although we do continue to integrate safety into our calls for projects. CDOT has, a safety-specific funding that they're able to put towards projects, whereas we don't have that type of funding available. In addition, we have continued to make changes to our calls for projects to make sure we're awarding good safety projects. But even in the call for projects that we have just gone through, that's awarding funding to projects in 24 and 25. So that's not making any kind of difference in this 5-year period that we're looking at, which was 2019 to 2023. So one of the things to keep in mind is the Towards Zero Deaths initiatives, or Vision Zero, you might call it. Just wanted to talk a little bit about that and how that plays into some of this planning process. So CDOT adopted their Towards Zero Deaths initiative in 2015. They also have the Strategic Transportation Safety Plan that was adopted in 2019, which set a 15% reduction in fatalities and serious injuries. Though CDOT has noted that the progression on those targets in that plan were impacted by COVID-19, and so that has definitely made a difference as far as the trends that we're seeing in the fatalities and serious injuries, that we're not seeing the reductions that we had anticipated. But CDOT continues to implement the strategies that they had outlined in the Strategic Transportation Safety Plan, and the NFRMPO participates in those processes as well, as we are able to. In 2020, the NFRMPO passed our safety vision towards zero deaths, and in that, we agreed to continue to prioritize safety in our calls for projects and looking at better data And those are some of the things that we've been implementing over the last couple of years. And so at this point, we don't have a specific Vision Zero action plan or anything like that. But as Suzette mentioned, one of the things that we're looking at going into the next year is how we can continue to improve our safety planning. And one of the opportunities that has been presented through IIJA is the Safe Streets and Roads for All. And I know that Fort Collins and I believe Larimer County have both applied for some of this grant funding, but there is an option for the NFRMPO to apply for a Vision Zero action plan or something like that. And one of the requirements for those plans is to set that zero deaths timeline. So if in the future we did have that kind of plan that outlines the strategies where we could achieve Vision Zero, we could base these targets on the strategies outlined in a plan like that. But at this point, we don't have that. And so with that, our recommendation is to still support the CDOT statewide targets. As I mentioned, we will plan and program projects that will continue to achieve impact the safety. And so also presenting the NFRMPO's status for crashes during these discussions as well, to kind of keep track of what the trends are looking like. But for the official targets that we submit to CDOT and to FHWA, supporting the statewide targets.
Questions for Anna Rose? This is a presentation now, action in next month, right?
Correct.
Okay. Questions, Frank?
So my understanding, the only funding is if we apply for the Zero Vision grant, otherwise these are just reporting numbers and such. It's
Yeah.
not tied to funding in any real way.
Correct. And these targets would be separate from like the Vision Zero action plan as well. But they are the federally required ones, but there isn't funding attached to these targets at all.
I guess as a second question, why is it taking what's now 2 years to find what appears to be 50 deaths in Northern Front Range? Why is it taking so long?
Yes, so the timing of data is definitely one of the issues that we've seen. Prior to 2020, it was only more like a 6-month data lag that we were seeing. So we would have gotten the crash data listings from CDOT, those official crash data listings, in the summer of the following year. But there's been a lot of different data issues that CDOT's had in being able to get that information to us.
So that data comes from CDOT down to us, not us feeding data up to CDOT.
Correct.
Okay.
And as an additional layer, it comes from the Department of Revenue, then it goes to CDOT. They clean it up, they give us the data, and then we have to geolocate it. So that data doesn't come with locational information. So we have to go through a process to actually put those on a map as well. And then we're able to figure out how many crashes actually happened in our boundary.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Brett?
Yeah, and I know I've said this every time we have this conversation, and I've said it at the Transportation Commission as well. These aren't just numbers, these are people. And so when we look at this and say, whatever it is, 242 or whatever those numbers are, none of those numbers are okay. The number has to be 0. And my suggestion would be, because we went around and around on this again at the Transportation Commission, I feel really strongly about this because we keep setting these targets saying, well, the feds make us do this or CDOT makes us do this. We stay in this loop. We just keep reporting these numbers, and however many people die over this 5-year average, we just use that to figure out how many more people it's okay to kill in the next 5 years. And it's not okay. And so at some point we have to break the cycle of how we're reporting this. I've made the same comments to USDOT, so it has to change all the way through. But at least now USDOT does have the Safer Streets for All application process. And I think that as you're putting this together and bringing the action item forward, this is just a suggestion, but it's one of the things that the Transportation Commission, the resolution acknowledged that our goal is 0. And that should be the target. But there are these federal processes that require us to do this, and therefore that number, those numbers of people is whatever it has to be. But the whole action item should convey the whole story, not just these numbers are okay, because it appears to other people, whether it's the North Front Range or the Transportation Commission or the federal side, that we're somehow approving this number of deaths. So my suggestion would be that as you're writing the resolution to come forward for action, it tells more of the whole story and puts this in that context and commits to going after the money to do the Vision Zero plan. I mean, you can't guarantee you're going to get a federal grant, but you can commit to go after the money. And the money's out there, and the way they're conveying it is if you apply for the USDOT money, that to do your action plan, that opens the door for more money to do the actual implementation. So there's an incentive to go for that money. And so my suggestion is put a whole package together that tells the whole story about why these are important, why we have to do it, and reiterate the commitment to safety in zero and what is going to be done going forward. Otherwise, we'll be here, someone will be here 2 years from now having the same conversation that we keep having in all these different conference rooms. So I'm conveying to you, I understand the predicament you're in. I said the same thing at the Transportation Commission, but at some point we have to break this data reporting cycle that somehow conveys that it's okay to kill a certain number of people every 5 years.
Out of curiosity, the federal money that we can chase via the grant process, what does that fund? If we were to get that money, what type of projects does that fund?
So my understanding, and the staff may be more aware of this than I, but it helps you do the assessment of your area, whether it's your community. It sounds like Fort Collins is going after money, maybe Larimer County. You do the data assessment of here's your crashes, here's where they're happening, here's your crash type, here's the countermeasures. So you could start prioritizing implementation of action items, whatever it might be. And so it's the study, though, that will give you the framework so that you're not just randomly picking what projects to submit for a grant. You actually have a strategy behind it, and this is what you're doing, and this is why. Here's the partnerships. I mean, and it's around not just the transportation staff developing that, but it's working with law enforcement, it's working with all of the different parties that are involved in safety. So again, it's an opportunity, but rather than just leaving it out there in this sort of maybe we will, maybe we won't frame, I think it would be important to commit. Again, you can't win if you don't play, but at least you get the application in and try to get the resources to come to address these.
That is part of the goals for next year is to go after that grant.
Right. So maybe there's a way to tie the resolution to the adopted goals, because we just approved the goals. So there's a way to tie that back and draw the thread. So there's some commitment to action behind this going forward. That's just my suggestion.
And I think also if we get the grant, which I don't see why we wouldn't,
Right.
If we get that grant, I think that will also build on some of your policy statements that you're making now, and then also help identify, like you said, what those hot spots are.
I like the idea of including that language in the resolution, just because I do think that, I mean, I don't know, I bet there's not a lot of people in the public that are looking at our resolutions, but just, for our own purposes, to say that, that we sort of don't find that acceptable, and that we're really trying to hit, while there's no opportunity for aspirational goals, we would certainly all aspire to having fewer or no deaths on our roads. And so I get that we have to jump through the soup. I do understand what Kathleen is saying, that it seems like, I mean, it's disturbing. I find it very distasteful to say, yes, 686 looks great, 49 for our community. That's somebody's kid, that's somebody's spouse, that's somebody's, I mean, and so the idea that we can't aspire to zero, I think is wrong. But, given the circumstances, I think the next best thing is to be able to go over after that money and to write some language into the resolution that expresses our desire to do better.
And we do have the resolution that we had passed in 2020 that is also referenced in these, following that, the performance of these target resolutions as well.
Additional comments for Anna Rose? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, discussion item number 14, PM2 pavement and bridge condition and PM3 system performance. Jerome.
Good evening, everybody. So first, I'll start with some background, and some of this may be a little repetitive since this is, okay. I will speak up. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Perfect. So I'll be starting some background. Some of it may be a little repetitive since this is a similar program to PM1. So first, this is required through federal law, which began with MAP 21. It was reauthorized with the FAST Act, and then most recently reauthorized with the IIJA. And there are 3 key goal areas: safety, as we heard Anna Rose, and then what I'll be discussing is infrastructure congestion and system performance. There is no financial penalty if we do not meet these goals. A penalty the NPO could receive is through our certification, but that is not common and that I do not think is a concern. We must consider these goals when we are working on our regional transportation plan and the transportation improvement program, as well as with our calls for projects. And we must set these goals by March 30th, 2023. CDOT set their targets on October 1st. We have 180 days to respond. Unlike PM1 with PM2 and PM3, we only set those every 4 years, unless CDOT chooses to update the 4-year target after 2-year target period is done, then we will have 180 days to respond. And similar to PM1, we have 2 options, which is to either support the state's goals, targets, or set our own. And in the past, the NFRMPO, we have agreed with the state targets. So we will go into infrastructure condition, which is PM2, and there are 6 targets with that. So the first category targets is pavement condition. And with that, we're looking at percentage of interstate pavements in good condition and in poor condition, and the percentage of non-interstate NHS highway systems in good and poor conditions. So because these are federally required, they are not looking at any road that is not on the NHS system, and that is for all of the performance measures that are required through federal law. And then with bridge condition, it is good and poor. They do not differentiate between interstate and non-interstate NHS. So here we have the actual targets. On the left, we have the first performance period, which is the period we just left. And then on the right is the second performance period, which is the period where we would set those targets in the future. So as we can see, when it comes to pavement condition, we did very well. We have met all those targets. We have exceeded all those targets. The same cannot be same for bridge condition. And if we look across from performance period 1 and performance period 2, you can see the targets are not drastically different. So when we look at pavement condition, it does make logical sense that as we move forward, the target will increase. And then with bridge condition, the target did decrease. These targets are similar to the safety targets. They are based off of data, and they are done through modeling from CDOT. All the data that we have received that CDOT has used came from CDOT or the federal government through the National Performance Measures Research Data Set. So I'll go to the next. So the next is PM3. And with this, we have 2 categories, which is system reliability and CMAQ. And under system reliability, we have percent of person miles traveled on the interstate that are reliable. So in this case, when they say reliable, that's referring to travel time. So a road that is, this is not a measure of congestion. So a segment of road that scores higher reliability could be very congested. What that is saying is that it is reliably congested. So if I am going to Denver, let's say 2 p.m. every Thursday, let's say, if it has high reliability and it takes 1 hour, then we can assume it'll take 1 hour every day. And the inverse is true. Just because there is a lower metric on this does not mean it is congested. It could be a section of road that is not very congested, but is just unreliable. Could take 30 minutes one day, could take 10 another, and vice versa. And with the CMAQ category, we have total emissions reductions from CMAQ funded projects with different greenhouse gases and other emissions. To note for this particular one, this is only for CMAQ funded projects. And if we were to set our own targets for this particular target, we would not have set a 2-year target, we would only have set a 4-year target for this particular target. For the rest, we would have to do a 2-year target and a 4-year target. So here we have, similar to PM2, we have on the left the first performance period and our results, and on the right, we have the targets that CDOT set on August 1st, 2022. So as we can see with system reliability, on the interstate, we have received 100%, which is not surprising, seeing that there is only one interstate in the region.
And it is
I will
widely
note-
suggested.
I will note with the CMAQ, you may notice that I did not prescribe a color. That is because with this performance measure, if we were to support the state targets, we would be agreeing to do our portion of it. So by supporting state targets, we are not saying that we are going to have 5,393 kilograms a day of reduction in the NFRMPO region. That is very unreasonable. What we are agreeing to is that we would do our portion to get the state to get that number. So for that particular measure, it is difficult to prescribe whether it's successful or not, because it depends on what other regions and other parts of the state are doing. So staff recommends supporting the state's targets for PM2 and PM3, as we have done in the past. And then next steps, we are also here at council discussing today. On January 18th, we will go to TAC for TAC action, and then we will be back in February to take action with council. And to reiterate, the targets are due to CDOT by March 30th. And I will answer any questions if you have any.
Questions for Jerome, please? Again, this is just a reporting function. You base it on data. There's not much to monkey with, I would imagine, so.
Definitely.
Sorry, I do have
Please.
one question.
Mhm.
So for the ones that you were showing that have been met or exceeded,
Mhm.
like in green, for the existing condition, it seemed like the new target in some cases would be lower. Like, what, if we're already achieving it, wouldn't you keep it at the same level to measure against in the future?
Yes.
Or you give yourself a lower bar in the future even though you've met it?
So for these targets, they are set by CDOT. So there are some of these measures where, while the NFRMPO, we have met the target, the state has not. And let's see if I can.
So then, I just was looking at, I was just trying to do that comparative across
Mhm.
the 2021 results relative to the 23 and 25 targets.
I will note too that this is based off of modeling. So for some of these where we do see the target is lower, that is because CDOT anticipates that either A, that there is some reason why we can anticipate that will be lower. So let's see if I can find.
It's okay, I don't want to spend an extra amount of time, I'm just trying to understand the relationship between the two, but it sounds like they're just, all of it is just continues to be formulaic and it just keeps rolling, and so I'm just trying to figure out, like, how are we actually benchmarking to get better? And it sounds like our data systems aren't really set up to help us do that. But it's helpful to see the snapshot of what we are accomplishing, and that's good news in this area around pavement condition. And then I guess my other question is, how active is the North Front Range MPO in going after funding through the bridge and tunnel enterprise?
So we don't apply for construction projects. I mean, that is something that all of you in the region go after, that the NFRMPO doesn't apply for construction projects. So bridge and tunnel enterprise, we may have some other comments coming up on that from CTIO. I don't know if you know anything about that, no? Okay, so.
Yeah, and I'm just curious, because I mean, part of our role on the commission is serving on the bridge and tunnel enterprise, and I'm always curious, like, why aren't there more projects coming forward from our part of the world?
Maybe it's because we need to be maybe better informed in the region and pushing things out a little bit better to our local communities about what's out there and what's available.
Right, and like, how do you get on the list? Because I've asked that question before, and it seems like you have to know some secret handshake somewhere to figure out how you get on the list. I mean, looking at staff, maybe, I'm sure it's better than that, but. So I'm just trying to figure out, how do you raise the bar then for bridge condition, and if maybe there could be a way that at a future meeting, someone either at the TAC or here, someone from CDOT could come and explain how do more people have access to the bridge and tunnel enterprise funding availability? What are those steps you have to go through to get a project on that list? Because there's lots of projects on the list every month.
Yeah.
You mean through IIJA unit stuff, or like the one that comes to the state?
The one that's in state.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's important.
Yeah.
It would help.
Yeah, there seems to be a lot of money available for projects there, so.
Yeah, we'll follow up.
Okay.
Additional comments or questions for Jerome, please? Please.
So is there only, like, I feel like when we've had our bridges rated, that there's more than just good and poor. But in the federal highways, those are the only two? You're either an A or a C minus?
Thumbs up and thumbs down.
Again, college transcript.
So, and this is just off of my memory. So how they evaluate bridge condition is based off of surface miles, and
I think don't they also do a sufficiency rating?
mhm.
Yeah, so I'm sure they do that off a sufficiency rating on the bridge condition, functionally deficient or, structurally obsolete or what, however you might put that, all in the Ds.
Just have good and poor, so.
Yeah, and then I think they break them into categories from there just for
That's what I was.
ease of grouping.
CDOT did give us their metrics and how they did set these targets and how they determined whether a section of bridge is good or bad, or good or poor, excuse me. So we could, I'm pretty sure we could distribute that if you like more information.
Well, it might not be bad to have, just so you understand it better.
Okay. We can follow up with that.
Additional questions or comments, please? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, on to council reports, please. First, Transportation Commission, Commissioner Brackey.
Sure. Well, our big news, and we talked about this last night at the North I-25 Coalition meeting, so very thankful that at the Transportation Commission meeting in December, we did get unanimous approval to move forward with segment 5 and have it go forward with the existing contractors. So that was really great news. And again, I really appreciate all the voices from Northern Colorado helping to make that happen and helping to convey the importance of that and the urgency behind it and the need to be able to move forward quickly and get things going. So I think that was a huge win and very happy that that played out the way it did in December. Again, as we talked about last night, it's like everything's, well, that's good, but what's next? So there's always a what's next.
Never stop.
So, yes. Yes, the fun never stops. So obviously continuing to work on the remainder of North I-25 and that connection, segment 4, 3B, the whole story. So it's how do we ultimately get the entire thing finished from Fort Collins to Denver. So, but we did make a big step forward in December. So got to celebrate the wins along the way. And I want to say thank you to Heather and her team and all the staff at Region 4 and the I-25 project team that really made a good, compelling case for why it makes sense to move forward that way. So that was December. At our meeting that's coming up later this month, again, it'll be virtual this month and it'll just be on Wednesday. And so we have workshops that whole day one is on the, here I have my list, the budget course, we have lots of budget workshops. And then there's also going to be one joint meeting with the Colorado Transportation Investment Office of CTIO, so thank you for being here. So that'll be a good opportunity for the Transportation Commission and CTIO board to work together and talk about things. And then the third workshop is around grants. And again, we talked about that last night and the importance of making sure that North I-25 Segment 5 is on the list to submit for federal funding in 2023. So that's the quick rundown of.
And what time does the workshop start?
It starts at 11:30. Virtual. There's a workshop portion from 11:30. The agenda was posted, but not the whole packet. And then after the workshop, there's the formal meeting, similar to last month, kind of a double header all in one day. But I can send out the link when everything's posted.
Questions or comments for Commissioner Brackett, please? Okay, CDOT Region 4 update. Heather Paddock, please. Hi, Heather.
Hi, can you guys hear me? Okay? Maybe?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great, because, sorry, having technical difficulties. Just getting back to the bridge ratings, yes, we do have more than good and poor. There is a moderate or a median clean. There are 4 primary controlling criteria that go with that, but there is a lot of data that they use to determine, you know, how those bridges fit into a good, fair, or not moderate, fair or poor rating. I just wanted to follow up on that. Kathleen hit on I-25 and the big win on segment 5. I think that's, you know, thank you to the support of the North Front Range. Thank you to the support of the I-25 coalition. It really is going to save the taxpayer dollars, and we're going to be able to move quite quickly into segment 5. RFP for design was released today, so we're going to move pretty quickly through that process selection, and the contractor's already on board, so we are starting really identifying utilities right away, all those necessary pre-construction things so we can start breaking ground, and it will be on the heels of segment 6, 7, and 8 sort of wrapping up their construction. So we're just moving the cone zone to the south. The other thing I wanted to mention is the TAP call. I think probably Suzette maybe hit on this, but TAP, which is the Transportation Alternatives Program, it's a pretty large program, I feel, for the North Front Range. Region 4 is going to be getting close to $12 million, 11.8. The project will go over fiscal years 2024 through 2026, and we anticipate that call starting in February. The dates are a little bit flexible, but I think if we can all plan towards a February start date, and then with selection in April, we will have a team consisting of some regional reviewers as well as someone from each TPR in Region 4, so that'll make up 4. We'll be having a conversation of best to be on the selection committee, as well as people from headquarters going through those applications. Other than that, those are the primary updates. I know Rich Christie gave a pretty good update on US 34. I like to describe 34 as one of those wicked problems. We know it's coming, and it's really going to take the partnerships and the collaboration with all of the communities to really find the right solutions on 34. There's been a lot of studies to date, and we know the growth. That's our next. You know, we've been a really strong force as it relates to I-25, and we continue to on that, but 34 is going to be one of our next primary east-west corridors that really is going to be growing and exploding. And I think it's going to take all of us together to really find the right solutions at the right time with the right dollars available. So I want to say thanks to Rich, and plenty more conversations to be had around that corridor as we move forward. And that's the update.
Okay, questions for Heather, please. Heather, thank you. Okay, staff report is written and in your packet. The Colorado Transportation and Investment Office. It is difficult for me to not call you Mayor. Cecil Gutierrez. Hello, Cecil.
Thank you, Scott. Appreciate it. Or should I say Chair James?
No, I knew you win, pal.
For those of you, I am the representative for Northern Colorado on the Colorado Transportation Investment Office. And I know a lot of you around this table and in the room, and a lot of you know me, but I know there are some new faces. I have been very, very active in Northern Colorado regional efforts. And as the mayor of the city of Loveland, very involved in getting segments 7 and 8 put together and in collaboration with all sorts of entities. Isn't that right? Mm-hmm. And I continue to be very involved regionally and at the state, currently as the representative to CTIO, but I'm also on the board of trustees at Western Colorado University, on the board of the Community Foundation of Northern Colorado, and I've been the chair of the Bond Oversight Committee for the Thompson School District for the last 4 years, so still involved, very involved.
But you're retired, right?
But I'm retired.
All right.
I just don't have to run for election every couple of years. And CTIO, I know that some of you know about CTIO, but I will tell you just a little bit about CTIO. It was established originally as the High Performance Transportation Enterprise, so we are an enterprise by the state legislature. It was established because CDOT needed assistance with an enterprise to be able to bond. And we have the bonding capability, just like any other enterprise. And most of you know what an enterprise is. Most of your cities, towns have enterprises, whether it's your water or your any of your utilities, those are enterprises. And we operate separately from CDOT, but have to be a great partner with CDOT and with the Transportation Commission. A lot of expansion when the first lanes went into effect. We were partnering with E470 because they had the capability to do all the tolling and all of the back office. Now we have outgrown that, and we're in the process of providing our own tolling services, and just released we have 4 people that are on the short list for providing those services. They won't mean anything to you at this particular point in time because they're just getting started in the process of us providing for us those services, which will be important as we move along here. As within the next year, about close to a year from now, we'll start tolling segments 6, 7, and 8. So that's about the time that we're looking at this first quarter of 2024 to start tolling. So being able to efficiently provide those tolling services will be important for us to be able to get these. The 4 companies that are on the short list to provide those are EMOVIS, EMOVIS, IBI Group, Toll Plus, and TransCore. And so that process will be taking place throughout the next 6 to 9 months, and hopefully we'll have them ready to go here within the next year and a half.
Cecil, can I interact with you there?
Sure.
I'm curious, you obviously have been through the tolling, the collection, the billing.
Yeah, that's, right now it's E470.
So will that be ubiquitous across the state? Or will I need different transponders for different stretches of road?
Right now, the goal is to not have separate transponders.
Okay.
We will, the goal is, and we're in negotiations with E470 to be able to utilize that same transponder.
Okay.
Although when you buy the transponder, when we start our own back office, if you get the transponder through us, then that will own that, and will own your data. If you purchased your transponder from E470, they own your data. So, but you as an individual know the difference. It'll be seamless. Okay?
Can I interrupt as long as?
Yeah.
So, you said that you would, start tolling in the first quarter of 2024. What happens?
We're thinking
Okay,
about that. I mean, you know that there's always,
so my question was, would you start tolling, like, if segment 5 is not done yet, but would you
Yes.
start tolling the other segments?
yeah, 6, 7, and 8. We'll start with 6, 7, and 8. And then as 5 is added, we'll add 5. It's kind of like what we did in Denver with segment 2. We started tolling segment 1 and then 2. And now 3A has been added and we've started tolling 3A. And the same thing with I-70, that whole I-70 East project is now getting, and there will be a period in there where we'll be testing. There'll be some freebie time where you'll be able to use that, and we'll be making sure that the equipment is working and all that. Okay? The other thing I think that's important that we're in the process right now, we're working on a project. There has been, over the years, significant issues with safety, especially on the mountain corridor, where the toll lanes are on the shoulders, and they're only open certain times, and there's been safety times when people have tried to use those when they're not open, and the federal government only allows us to use those for a certain number of days a year. So the state legislature passed a bill a year ago, HB 22-1074, which gave the CTIO the opportunity to make rules for enforcement of toll collection and against toll evasion. And so we are in the process of testing that, a new high-tech project up there in the mountain through a company called Blissway Inc. And that will be the model. And once we've proven that technology, then that'll be used throughout the system. So it's in the testing phase right now. Okay. And then lastly, I think I'll tag on to what Commissioner Brackey had to say about segment 5. Great news. I was sitting on the edge of my chair watching you all for that vote.
You and me both, Bill.
Yeah. And I think that I would agree with Commissioner Brackey that we've got to take that win. And as you all know, and this is the one that probably you've been wanting to hear from me about, is that in November at our meeting, we chose not to go forward with the unsolicited proposal. And what I will tell you is I cannot speak to you about specifics of that proposal because it is proprietary and based on the determination of the Attorney General. We cannot give you specifics of that, but I can tell you this, that one of the reasons that it was determined that CDOT and the CTIO actually had the ability to move forward with that segment 5 for sure here right away. We have that capability, and it's moving. Segment 6 and segment 4 and segment 3B there'll be some work that needs to be done between CTIO and the Transportation Commission and CDOT to be able to move that forward. But I think we are confident that it can fit within the 10-year plan there, including now listen, that I say confidence.
You'd be excited there, Cece.
I think the key piece of it is that with not going forward with the unsolicited proposal, CTIO maintains control of maintains public control of the tolling policy and the funds and access to that excess toll revenue. One of the things that I think as part of our study, as we were going through there, we did a new analysis, which was something that I had asked for a couple of years ago, of the tolling capabilities of segments 5, 6, 7, and 8. And we think that that is going to produce very well. And so with that, I think that being able to control those excess toll funds as we move forward, we think we can figure out a way to do segment 4 and 3B. But there's work, because segment 4 doesn't have a rod on it yet. There's still some work. Region 1 is starting a study on their safety and how they're going to work on segment 2, on the safety issues of segment 2.
Good.
Okay?
Questions for Cecil, please?
Just side note. Thank you for your service to Loveland for all the years.
Oh, yeah.
We never crossed paths, but your reputation is stellar.
Oh, thank you.
As far as transportation like that, zones and territories, are you all a state? Everybody works in the state, they don't split it out.
It's
generic kind of thing.
The board is made up of 7 people. And if I understand your question correctly, there's a representative for the north area of the state, one for the south, one for the mountain, one for the metro regions that are appointed by the governor. And then there are 3 members of the Transportation Commission that the Transportation Commission appoints. So there are 7 total members.
Okay, so it is divided up.
It is divided up into the 4, basically, 4 regions, 4 areas of the state.
Frank?
You gave me a slight chuckle when you said it's going to yield well, because that implies the number of people up here and those roads are going to be absolutely packed, which is going to drive people into those toll lanes. So in some sense, yes, we'll be parked gridlocked in the northern region for a while. It's going to generate lots of revenue. The other question I had was that you're looking at various companies, and I know you said it's a goal to have one pass. Shouldn't it be a statewide goal that we are, I guess, paying this company, just to organize that as a state, to simplify? I don't have 2 transponders. Who on earth is the?
You won't have 2 transponders. We're in negotiations now to make sure that same transponder can be used regardless. And your payment will go to one place.
But shouldn't that be, is that not organized by the state or by a single entity collecting and managing that database? Or?
The database is not,
because you're mentioning if you sell me the transponder, I have an E47, I have several E47 transponders.
That database is maintained, but see, they provide us all that information to CTIO, and vice versa when the 2 separate back offices occur. That's see, E470 and Northwest Parkway are not part of CTIO. Those managed lanes are a separate entity altogether.
Okay, so there's no desire to get together, reduce costs?
There has been up until this point. The problem is that they are so small. Here's the problem with back office, is that they are small. They have just the one corridor that they're dealing with. We've got all of these corridors up through the mountains, all the way down to Colorado Springs, I-70, E470, pretty soon, 270. There'll be a whole lot of corridors, and so we've outgrown what their capabilities are to provide the information that we need. We need time of day information. Their back office cannot support the kind of data and information that we need.
I guess, would you offer them the service?
We could, if they would like that. We cannot force ourselves onto them.
I understand. It just seems, just as a taxpayer.
Yeah.
As in Commissioner James is pointing out, I don't want 10 different transponders in
You
my.
That's not our goal. Our goal is to maintain one.
And I certainly don't want to be paying for, oh, hold on, who is the bill coming from? And who's got this data? And it's, oh, it didn't transfer from Office 1 to Office 2. And it's just all that nightmare. I just don't want it.
That's not gonna happen. That is our, I will tell you that has been one of the things that we've insisted on, that when we do this back office stuff, we want to make sure it's as easy and as seamless as possible for the person driving.
Other questions or comments for Cecil? Thanks, sir, very much.
Thank you, and thanks for asking me to come, and I will be more than happy to, come and visit with you. My goal is to try to at least come once a quarter.
Great.
And Suzette's got my contact information, and as most of you that I know, when I visited with you, I said, give me a call, if you want to have coffee or whatever, anytime, when you want more detailed information, so, okay?
I appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, on to the I-25 coalition. That's me. In the interest of being brief, we won on segment 5, yay. US 34 coalition, many of you are a part of that conversation. That's a big yay as well. I think we've got a lot going on there. Commissioner Stevens will be the new chair of that. And we continue to go down the path of the TMO. And I think there are good things going there. More to report, hopefully in the next month or two. NAPME, Commissioner Stevens.
Yes, so NAPME met in December. We finalized our annual report that just basically talked about what we had done over the past year, which was largely electing officers and creating bylaws and creating a 10-year plan, which was fairly vague, purposefully vague, because we haven't really decided how we're going to evaluate projects yet and allocate the dollars that we're bringing in. We did get a financial update. We have collected $495,000 in the retail delivery fees. So that's 0.7 of 1 cent on every retail delivery in the state. And then we've collected $1.5 million in the rideshare fees. So that's 22.5 cents on each rideshare. So with interest, our total revenues that we've been able to collect are now over $2 million, which is exciting. We had projected, I believe, around $7 million for the 22-23 fiscal year. So we'll see if that's right. It was sort of hard to gauge that, I think, how many ride shares, what delivery fees would look like. So, but so far at least we have some money now. Now we'll start looking at ways to expend those dollars. I think there's some definite interest in bus rapid transit, but I think other programs will be considered for funding. And our next meeting is January 26th.
Okay. Questions for Commissioner Stevens? Front Range Passenger Rail District, Mayor Carspect.
Mr. Chair, Councilmember Olson and I met at Union Station in Denver on December 8th and 9th, one afternoon, and then the 9th of that morning for our retreat for the first time to meet the other members in person and kind of just, it was largely going over onboarding, creating what our new district responsibilities were. We had our new attorney come in and kind of present to stuff that probably most of us elected officials know, but some on the district probably needed a briefer on what Cora is and setting up our own personal emails and whatnot. Then we just went over kind of our overall visions for the rail or for the districts. I don't want to repeat Commissioner Stevens, but I think it was rather big on mine too. We don't have any kind of concrete things. I do want to point out, Councilmember Olson and I did bring up, again, the ongoing discussion of Weld, particularly, the Greeley area and how that's included. And they summed it up here in, here. The concept of all in it together was discussed, including how to work for the corridor when alignment decisions will determine if some communities will be served or not by passenger rail. It was noted that the ideals of respect, listening, collaboration will be tested. That's, I think, a polite way they put it out. The,
Shut up and pay your tax.
I do want to say something good though.
I have something to say.
Sal Pace, Johnny did a really good job too. And Sal Pace, and on the second day, wanted to kind of amend the service development plan to relook at all options. And we haven't settled on a particular corridor, but I think all things considered, it is looking at the BNSF corridor going through Larimer here. But I think I'll just say that after I talked to Sal over dinner, and I think Johnny had a good conversation with a lot of people too, there was a real acknowledgement of what this means for Will, either being in here or not being in it. And so, though that didn't formally become a part of the service amendment to the service development plan to expand it, the wording in here was to have a parallel, essentially a parallel study. I can't find the exact wording, but I can forward this off to you. But looking at how this would go if it went through well, and then I think we just need to have that discussion. But we're not at that time, and so it was really rather vague for the retreat. But I think overall it went really well.
Oh, but, so legislatively, they picked the alignment. So to change the alignment, you have to go back to the legislature?
Right. It would be, you're right, yeah. We have to write in and essentially.
My question was the timing of the service development plan, like when will there actually be like the planning process moving forward and
I think
things for the public to see and like.
That's so, we just picked committees. I'm on the communication committee and we haven't had dates for that yet. I think we're just starting that this year as far as in-person, town hall type stuff. But I think this is when this kind of officially kicked off was December 8th. So it's been vague up till then. And unfortunately, that was a rather vague retreat. But I'd say as most retreats go when you're newly elected to something, it is rather kind of getting to know one another and really initial paperwork type stuff. So I'll talk to Johnny. I do want to bring you guys more back something substantive. They're just hiring on their first coordinator, so we just have Andy Cargion, the project manager, but we're finally going to be hiring on someone to help them out. And so we don't really have anyone right now to present, but maybe Johnny and I can put something together and at least get Andy here or on Zoom or something, and we can all ask him questions, the general manager.
I mean, whenever it makes sense, it just would be interesting. People, I don't know about others, but you read about it in the paper, you hear different things. It'd be interesting to know like kind of what's getting traction.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll keep you, in our meeting is not till the end of this month, but I'll keep you updated on that.
So if you did do that, what time frame would you think you would want to do that? February, March?
For what?
For doing a presentation and talking about
I'd say March, give us one more month.
Can I ask a question? So with regard to weld, and the configuration already being considered, do you think there'd be any appetite for, connections to, if it's not part of the line, would that enterprise be able to invest in any kind of bus rapid transit or anything that could bring people from Weld closer to that? I don't know how that works exactly, but I'm just saying, if Weld County residents are paying the tax and paying extra for this, I think that there should be some consideration of how they would get to that train.
Absolutely.
And so I guess I just think even if the route can't be changed or there's an unwillingness to change the route, what are the other accommodations that can be made that would make it so that Weld County residents could also, have an ease of getting to the train?
Getting to the access, yeah. I don't have an answer, but I think that's it.
Just like think about, I guess.
That's all I have.
Okay. Additional comments, questions for Mayor Carlsbad? Thanks, sir. Okay, host council member report. Councilor Canonico, please.
Thanks everyone for coming up. I feel like this is one of the bigger meetings that we've had in a while. So thanks for hitting the road and coming up here in person. I'm going to shorten what I was going to talk about as we're running a little bit behind. But the big thing I'm really excited about with Fort Collins is that we just adopted on December 20th a active modes plan. And this is combining our our bike plan and our pedestrian plan into one, and it includes recommendations for 144 miles of new bike facilities and 165 pedestrian and bike spot treatments, so safety. Yeah, so pretty excited about that. And this is all centered around the vision of Fort Collins as a 15-minute community. So making walking and biking enjoyable and accessible to everyone. And then keeping with safety, our Vision Zero action plan. So the draft Vision Zero action plan is open for public comment right now, and that'll, well, not quite yet, January 13th. It's open until, and then we will have a work session scheduled for council on February 14th. And so we're looking to get down to 0 fatalities with that plan. And then keeping with safety and aging bridges, LaPorte Avenue corridor improvements. Construction work has begun on the initial phase of that project, and we're replacing 2 aging bridges. And the overall project will help complete the city's low-stress bicycle network and includes significant pedestrian improvements. And then another safety project is Trilby and College. We're improving that intersection, and that's our #1 safety project. 60% design documents were completed earlier this year, and right-of-way acquisitions underway. And recent funding awards of $3.6 million in STBG funding and 1.9 in community project funding are helping us to close the construction funding gap there. And this will improve safety on that intersection for the current and future traffic levels. So those are a few of the projects we're working on. And another one I'm really excited about is the overpass, the Siphon overpass that'll go over the Union Pacific Railroad, and that'll mean bicyclists will no longer have to go under that underpass in a very narrow 2-lane road, or just bicyclists are going over the railroad tracks now. So I'm really excited to see that one coming through, and that one was also funded as a result of the additional allocation discussed this evening. So thank you very much.
Thank you for hosting us.
My pleasure.
Okay, one last item here. And this is an executive session. At this time, the chair will entertain a motion to enter into executive session. And a council member whom would I say? There you go.
I move the council enter into an executive session pursuant to section CRS 24-6-4024F for discussion of a personnel matter regarding the annual evaluation of the executive director and not involving any specific employee who has requested discussion of the matter in open session. Any member of this body or any elected official, the appointment of any person to fill an office of this body or of an elected official or personnel policies. Need a second.
Second.
Motion by Councilor Model, second by Councilor Baser to adjourn into executive session. Further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We will go into executive session. It is a Teams meeting. Are you firing stuff up there? Okay.
That's great stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The owl stuff.
make a motion. Approval, and then the contract amendment will be sent to the chair for signature.
Outstanding. That's simple. Okay, with that said, the chair will entertain a motion to approve or disapprove the executive director's six contract amendments.
So moved. Second.
To approve.
To approve.
Okay. Motion by, was it you, Mayor?
No, Councilor Mallow.
A motion by Councilor Mallow, a second by Councilor Baszler to approve with the executive director's six contract amendments. Further discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, we should be done, right?
We are done.
Okay, nothing fit further to come before this council will stand adjourned. Thank you. Hey, hey, hey.
There's a much better. Thanks for being.